Often I receive messages from many that say things like, Kevin, keep standing, don't give up. And I always appreciate those kind words. However, now is not the time to hope others stand up for our people. If you yourself are not willing to stand up and speak up for our people that are suffering at the hands of the corrupt and brutal Burma regime. You see, to be silent is to not only accept defeat, but to betray those in our land that are not afforded the same rights as you have been given, with the opportunity to relocate to a country that affords you of freedom. Freedom cannot be taken from people without their permission. The permission given to the corrupt and brutal Burma regime has been through those they co-opted to act in the interest of the Burma generals instead of acting on behalf and standing for their very own people. The more than 70-year conflict is very simple. It's not complicated at all. The bottom line, the corrupt and brutal Burma generals took advantage of the ethnic people who were trusting and acted in good faith, when all the while the corrupt and brutal Burma generals knew exactly what they were doing. They would have a burning desire to rid the region of all ethnic groups and take the land by force because of their greed for the precious resources such as jade, diamonds, gold, and many other precious gems. This all started a long time ago with Aung San Suu Kyi's father. Yes, the one that is now a statue that the criminal Burma generals are forcing to be erected all over the region in the land of the ethnic people. This is being done to consecrate the forced Burmanization of the region. One nationality, one language, one culture, one religion. They are so sick in their pursuit and their desire that for decades the corrupt, brutal generals directed their soldiers to rape as many ethnic women as they could possibly find, to thin out the ethnic blood and to help in Burmanization. Consider how evil this regime is and all they have done to try and destroy our amazing people. Yet, our people continue to stand against all odds. President George H.W. Bush placed sanctions on the corrupt Burma regime during his term as president and allowed for the resettlement of thousands of ethnic people to the United States. The corrupt Burma generals wanted this to hurt the ethnic people, but instead, they garnered favor. The Karen people garnered favor with all in the United States and other places, other countries would be relocated to. Unfortunately, after President Obama was elected to office, he soon after began courting Aung San Suu Kyi along with Secretary Hillary Clinton. They stopped any future resettlement opportunities and lifted all economic sanctions against the Burma generals. And they began pouring money into the corrupt Burma generals' coffers. When I have met with the real leaders of each ethnic group, not the proxy leaders that the corrupt Burma generals have propped up to act as self-appointed leaders of those who not only never elected them, but despise them because they know that they have betrayed their people. They've been against their people. They share with me how the Burma generals paid large amounts of money to corrupt those that they set up to act as leaders of the ethnic groups, and what they did and what they paid them to do, none other than to force the NCA on each ethnic group by fraudulently convincing the international community that those leaders were selected by their people, which was all a lie. In fact, those so-called elections were orchestrated by the Burma corrupt generals, who actually had their people present for the so-called elections, not by the people, but instead from carefully selected people who the corrupt and brutal Burma army knew they had control of. The corrupt Burma generals selected those corrupted leaders to pretend they are for their people, when in fact they are self-serving, hiding the riches given to them by the corrupt Burma generals in bank accounts of their family members in different countries even. This one day will all be exposed in the future, and those corrupted leaders will be held accountable for their fraudulent actions, and they're acting in concert with the corrupt Burma generals to commit genocide and human rights abuses against hundreds of thousands. After Karen people began standing for their people around the world, heading to their government leaders, demanding that the corrupted Burma generals be held accountable, the Burma generals, they have not been able to stop this. They have tried over and over again through co-opted, corrupted leaders in other countries like the United States, trying to silence the voice of the Karen people. Why? Because the corrupt Burma generals know that the NCA is the only thing that stands between them and the international criminal courts, prosecuting them for their horrific war crimes. The NCA nationwide ceasefire agreement was never meant to provide a federal system whereby ethnic people would have equal rights under the law. In fact, the 2008 Constitution has never given them equal rights. After Aung San Suu Kyi was elected, she was loyal to her father and his desire to fully Burmanize the region, and she has worked to do this her entire time serving in office. Never has she condemned the actions of the corrupted Burma generals. She even worked to cover for their crimes. Even a top NLD member defected and confessed that the NLD is acting in collusion with the corrupt Burma generals. Burma has been able to also hide behind Russia and China to continue in their dirty deeds. In 2020, the corrupt Burma generals have pledged to empty all refugee camps and force the ethnic people that reside there deep into Burma. Their strategy in secret documents is to split up all the ethnic people into smaller groups, scattering them throughout Burma-controlled areas to keep them from regrouping or having each other to maintain their culture and autonomy and their history. Those already sent to Burma-controlled areas complain of continued human rights violations, land grabs, rape, and the list goes on, even till today. Most recently, the corrupt Burma generals saw the United States change course under President Donald Trump, reimposing sanctions against the corrupt Burma generals. Israel memorializing they will no longer sell weapons to them. President Trump hosting ethnic people in the Oval Office, and his promise to them broadcast on live TV when he said, quote, "I will stand by you forever," end quote. And the release of the damning United Nations report outlining continual crimes from the Burmese generals and their collaborators. You can only imagine how determined these corrupt generals are to try and continue in their evil plot to dominate the region and eliminating all ethnic groups. Most recently, we see that the corrupt Burma generals have co-opted ethnic people, even here in the United States, and have used them to push the NCA on the Karen in the USA. Even recently, if you took a trip to Burma to undergo training from pro-NCA Burma collaborators in how to silence the voices of the Karen in the USA that stand against the NCA. With a recent poll of over 1,000 Karen, 94% state they do not want the NCA. They believe that they must resist it at all costs to gain freedom and self-determination. The corrupt and brutal Burma generals have failed to co-opt the majority of our Karen. Just recently, we see continued escalation of the corrupt and brutal Burma generals, attacking Arakan, Kachin, Shan, Karen, Karenni, Mon, and even today we see that their brutal attacks on innocent villagers resulted in the killing of Kachin Christians that include a 4-year-old, a 4-month-old, a 10-year-old, a 14-year-old, an 18-year-old, and a 37-year-old from our amazing Kachin people. All killed because the Burma regime despises their culture, their religion, their language, and wants their land. How anyone can think the corrupt and brutal Burma regime can be trusted with any peace process is completely absurd. The only thing that will guarantee peace for our ethnic people is for their security forces to continue to protect them from the corrupt and brutal Burma army, and to have their own independent statehood for each ethnic group. Those pushing for the NCA are in collusion with the corrupted Burma generals. No one can take freedom without permission. All of what the corrupt, brutal Burma regime has done is through co-opting proxy leaders that they have chosen for each ethnic group. They bribe them and then they get them to force the NCA on their respective other ethnic groups and their own people. Even using the largest of the ethnic groups to pressure smaller ethnic groups who had not signed on to the NCA because they did not want it, but they pressured and coerced them into signing. The corrupt, brutal generals have pending criminal indictments from the international criminal courts. They are frantically working to keep the NCA in place, as they know without it, they will be convicted and forced from power. Don't message me encouraging me to keep standing. Instead, start standing up yourself and join the ranks of the courageous that stand up for their people, instead of those pathetic people co-opted by the corrupt Burma generals who offer money to co-opt and turn people against their very own people. Silence is acceptance, and those that remain silent or complacent will be the ones that bear the unbearable guilt of betraying their own people. Through silence, that will result in harsh suffering for our people. Do not let those co-opted people intimidate you, telling even pastors that they should not involve themselves with seeking freedom and self-determination for their people. Consider this: if pastors began to listen to this, if good people began to listen to this nonsense and do nothing, the only people left would be those co-opted by the corrupted, brutal regime. And they will continue to hand all of Kawthoolei over to one of the most brutal regimes the world has ever seen. These corrupt and brutal Burma generals will be held accountable for their evil actions. Stand on the side of those suffering. God declares to us to stand up for the weak and never collude with the wicked. I leave you with God's word. In Genesis 50, 20-21, God said, "You plotted evil against me, but God turned it into good in order to preserve the lives of many people who are alive today because of what happened. You have nothing to fear. I will take care of you and your children." It's powerful words in Genesis. In Psalm 82, 3 and 4, God said, "Defend the weak and the orphans. Defend the rights of the poor and suffering. Save the weak and helpless, and free them from the power of the wicked." The corrupt and brutal Burma generals are the wicked. In Joshua, God tells us, "Be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid, nor be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." Lastly, for our young, amazing leaders that God has been amassing around the world, that are resistant to corruption and passionate for their people, God said in 1 Timothy 4:12, "Let no one look down on you because you are young, but rather in speech, conduct, love, faith, and purity, show yourself an example of those who believe." Jesus was 13 years old when he began his ministry. Never allow those corrupted to convince you that you are insignificant, because I believe 100% that your generation of Karen are chosen by God to lead Kawthoolei to freedom and self-determination. Please pray for General Nerdah as he stands with you in this purpose to free our people. May God bless you all.